This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Asana, the revolutionary platform to manage all your projects more easily and effectively. For your free 30-day trial, visit asana.com/BeanCast today. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Transcription services provided by transcribeme.com. Episode 529, Woke Washing. Monday, January 28th, 2019. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob North. Thanks for joining us. We learned this week that Facebook plans on migrating all of its satellite apps onto a single common platform. They say it's to improve user experience across their portfolio, but what else could be driving the move? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, why two documentaries are putting influencer marketing in the spotlight, how the streaming battles are heating up now, Facebook's page quality tab, plus this week's Ad Fail 5. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the Senior Director and Analyst for Customer Experience at Gartner, Mr. Augie Ray. Hi, Augie.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening to you. Now, next up, we're pleased to welcome the Chief Marketing Officer for pizza delivery app Slice. Mr. Ryan Scott is here. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Bob.
And finally, we have the founder and president of B2B content marketing provider for tech, Spark Media Solutions. Mr. David Spark is with us. Hi, David.
It's been a while, Bob. I'm thrilled to be back.
I'm always thrilled to have you on the program. You're a rabble-rouser. You get into trouble. Well, let's jump right into the topics. And the first story that caught my eye this week, the industry press revealed that Facebook is reneging on their hands-off promise. If you remember, Facebook promised again and again that they were going to have a hands-off approach to the many apps that they were acquiring. And now they are working toward integrating these satellite apps into a common platform that will allow Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp to communicate with each other, share data, share information, share users. On the surface, David, it sounds really, really good. I mean, this sounds good for users, the ability to cross-communicate. Someone's making a lot of noise. So it sounds really good on the surface, but, you know, it's still Facebook. So what do you think? I mean, is it going to actually be good for users in the end, or is this just going to be good for Facebook?
Well, there's also marketers to take into consideration here as well. So let me answer this all the way around. So, of course, it's good for Facebook. They're making the decision. So they've always, they wouldn't do something that's intentionally bad for themselves. So there's a few things. Also, there's a lot they haven't told us, so it's not exactly clear what they're going to do. But they claim that the three apps will still stay independent, but there will also be a merging of the three. It's important to note that WhatsApp, by default, and in fact, it's the only way to do it, is sends your messages encrypted, which is not the case with Facebook's two other apps, although Facebook has claimed that they're going to give you the option of having your data encrypted. Why that isn't just default and the norm, I don't know, because we've had a problem with Facebook passing your private messages.
No, wait a minute. When they say it'll be an option, are they saying it'll continue to be an option on WhatsApp, or are you thinking that the new integration is
So they say it's going to be an option. Again, this is the initial claim. They say it's going to be an option on Facebook messaging and Instagram that you can choose encrypted, similar to what WhatsApp has. And by the way, WhatsApp makes another product called Signal, which allows you for encrypted messaging for standard SMS, which I also actually highly recommend, and it's free, like WhatsApp. But so it's why they're not doing it for all of it, because they got into some hot water when their messaging was being passed to both Netflix and Spotify. And they did that initially so people from their Spotify app could use Facebook Messenger, but it apparently opened the door for all the messages to be read by encrypting them. Then even if the messages did come through, they would still be encrypted. So why they're not just encrypting them all, I don't quite understand. They should be doing that. For marketers, it is to be seen. The question is, will they offer new integration cross-platform that will be of value to a marketer?
Now, before we get into all that, because that is a portion of the conversation I do want to explore a little bit more. I want to dwell more on why they're doing this. Because, I can understand from a simplification standpoint, having one common architecture that goes across all the apps would be easier to manage. It would allow users to connect from one platform to the other platform seamlessly. I understand the benefits, but I also am really, really skeptical of what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, Augie, I'm going to get Augie in on this for a second. Augie, what do you think's going on? Because it's just like I hear legal rumblings. I mean, things like Facebook's doing this to maybe avoid antitrust legislation by saying that we're not a monopoly, that we're, a single platform, that somehow this could get them in the free and clear. There's other people who are saying it's more about just amassing all the data in a common place and potentially exploiting that to the user's detriment. So from a customer experience standpoint, it looks really good, but it could ultimately be really bad for people, right?
Well, you raise many good questions, and frankly, I don't think that Facebook has done a very good job of explaining what's going on here. I tend not to think that there is any change in data here, because at the end of the day, Facebook has owned these apps for years. They have access to all the data. I don't think Facebook putting this together makes any difference whatsoever on whether Facebook can use the data or not use the data. So I don't think that's it. From a CX standpoint, as you point out, I do think that it makes a little bit of sense. You've got people who are on WhatsApp, you've got people on Messenger. I'm a little curious why Instagram is part of this. WhatsApp and Messenger are clearly private messaging apps. Instagram is, in my mind, more of a social rather than a dark social or messaging application. I certainly think there's efficiency questions here, as you point out, of being on a single platform. The thing I find really odd, though, in the announcement is that they made the point of saying that the three are still going to be run separately. What's the point of that? Why run three apps separately inside the organization if they're all on a common code base and going to be offering what appears to be sort of identical features, and so I just think there's a lot that's outstanding in terms of what we know about what's going on here. But I will say one last thing, and that is that I can't imagine how Facebook makes a case for not being a monopoly by bringing these three messenger apps together under one code base, which looks like the sort of thing a monopoly would do. So I would like to think that this is mostly about the customer this time. It depends on what they do in terms of giving more opportunities for marketers to interrupt and possibly annoy people in the application, but they can do that now. So yeah, it's interesting. Everyone's making a lot of buzz about this. One last thing, sorry. Messenger people, I think, are going to get benefits out of this. They're going to get, as you pointed out, Dave, some end-to-end encryption that they don't now have. WhatsApp has always been known for handling low bandwidth situations better. I'm kind of curious what happens with the WhatsApp people, because a lot of them were upset when the app was bought out. They're going to be upset now that some of these promises that maybe they counted on were broken. But we've also been down this road before with social media users, where everyone gets irate and everyone shakes their fist and everyone says they're going to abandon, and generally speaking, few do. So I think we got to wait and see what they bring together and how they bring together, and
Augie,
whether they force
you actually
WhatsApp people to sign up for Facebook or not.
You make a good point there. There are many stories, and I've reported on this many times, where Facebook makes a change with their platform. people get irate about it, talk about leaving, and Facebook says people always get upset with change. This is a repeated story again and again. It's not the first
Well,
time.
but here's the long and the short of it, and I want to get Ryan in on this part of the conversation because users, they don't even know that Instagram is part of Facebook. I mean, we find that again and again. People are not as savvy as we give them credit for in terms of understanding
well,
who
Facebook
owns what.
Stories is now.
So I mean,
and Instagram stories are intertwined.
So, but I mean, in the end, Ryan, if all these apps are put together on a common platform, but the user experience is still I'm using WhatsApp, how would they know if their data is being compromised? How would they know if somehow this is not good for them and not good for their, privacy and their data management and everything else that's going on with the use of these platforms?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, look, after hearing what the other folks were saying, I think I sort of see two vectors here. One, let's just talk about it quickly from a Facebook standpoint. They've made significant acquisitions. They have spent a tremendous amount of money to acquire these assets. Consolidation and synergies have to come from them. There's a shareholder responsibility from that standpoint. I think the way they're justifying this particular, let's call it monolithic integration of these applications is the user experience will be better, retention and usage and value to the user will increase. And I think what we all have to think about here is you have to sort of level up for a second and think globally. These applications are used and adopted very differently depending on the geography you live in. They are not equal. They are disproportionately used depending if you're in the US and biased towards that market and that consumer. And you look at China or you look at India or you look at even, Europe, the Middle East, these apps are completely used in very different ways. So I think there's some value here for Facebook clearly, but for the user as well to get exposed to applications that while might be on the same code base, they actually give you access to different features. And I think that's why they're not going to create the same functionality potentially across all of these. Now, to answer your question, I don't think the user knows in broad strokes exactly what's happening. I think, look, Facebook has taken it on the chin, and for good reason. I think we all want to support good companies, and I'm not going to give my personal view right now on what I think of Facebook. I do think, look, at the highest level, they've shared too much, have been exposed, in Congress on issues that are very sensitive, and they face a lot of uphill battle when it comes to security. I mean, that's always been their threat. Their nuclear threat is security. I think from a user standpoint in the US, yeah, I think they're going to be sensitive to this. I think in other countries where the user is more mainstream, long tail, not as knowledgeable about what's happening on the business side like us, I don't think they're going to really understand what the implications are to them. So ultimately, I think this is a really smart decision. From a shareholder standpoint, if I held shares of Facebook, and I might in some mutual fund, and I think from a user experience standpoint, I think over time this is going to be beneficial to them, and I think they'll be stickier to Facebook. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it does seem like it would enhance the experience to a level where any kind of detriment would be overlooked by the users. I mean, the ability to seamlessly connect is something that I think a lot of users would welcome, considering the fact that everybody likes to simplify. Nobody likes to have too many apps, too many logins, too many everything. And that's what Facebook's been so good about doing. How does this move? Now I'm going to go back to David for this because now I'm going to give you the chance to answer about marketing. How does this move benefit us as marketers? What do you see as the primary opportunities that are being created because of this move by Facebook?
Honest to God, I don't see any because we don't know what they're doing. I mean, honestly, there's literally no answer to this. But to go back to the earlier point about why they're merging all of this, it's just time on app. I mean, think about it. Everyone knows that longer time on app means more money. And if they can bring three of these together and entice people to, switch from one app to the next, back, and to keep them in their ecosystem, then it's longer time on app. And also, WhatsApp is not being monetized. Now they can potentially monetize WhatsApp. So there's opportunities there.
That's a great point. I was just going to interject really quickly,
Sure.
and I'm not as close to this, but I believe Facebook did tout that they were going to launch a phone at some point.
Didn't they launch a phone in the past? I mean, it's just like that was a complete disaster, wasn't it?
I think they did, and then rolled it back pretty quick.
Yeah.
But you wonder if this is either a reaction to the failure, or did they learn from it, fail fast, and are they going to blitz scale something else because maybe they needed more scale? And
I think that's an
Augie, you're breaking up.
interesting things that caught my eye about this. I don't know
you're
what
back.
to do
You're
about
back
that.
now. You're back. Go ahead.
All right. Because one of the things I think is really interesting here is that for the last couple of years, everything Facebook did seemed to be aimed at Snapchat. I mean, they were copying Snapchat, right? Everyone kind of knew it. But Snapchat has stalled out. They've stopped growing in the first quarter of last year. And it looks to me like this is an announcement not aimed at Snapchat, but aimed at Apple, Google, and Tencent. And I think, though, the point here is that what they're trying to do is bring some scale to private messaging, because in other places, as you pointed out, Ryan, these private messaging applications do a lot more than just act as a replacement for SMS. Tencent obviously is doing a great deal of e-commerce through it. And so I actually think this is more strategic, an approach to trying to do something more than they are currently doing with WhatsApp and Messenger.
I've got to consider one thing. It's just like you don't make a move like this, which is a massive, expensive architecture rework of all the applications, unless you have some kind of profitability built into this, that there's some way to make money.
Well, of course they're going to make more money. This is just a data-hungry company, and they make more money off of our data.
Well, that's what I mean. From an advertiser standpoint, I see this as potentially being a windfall of understanding how consumers interact between their private messaging and their social presence. That somehow the connection between the two,
the new regulations coming in, they may be heavily hampered. It's to be seen.
Of course they're going to be heavily hampered, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to take advantage of this opportunity and create an insight into how consumers go from that private conversation into the public space, into the purchasing arena. I think that.
Don't you think they know that already, though? I mean,
I think they know it already, but I think that there's an opportunity here that maybe we're not seeing. Because why would you go to this trouble and expense unless you're either A, saving a significant amount of money, or B, somehow making a hell of a lot more money? And
it's a great question. One of the things WhatsApp doesn't have is the bots that are in Messenger, and the bots, while they have been somewhat disappointing to brands so far, certainly there's a lot of thought that automating communications in some way might be a big opportunity in the future here. I think e-commerce still remains, Facebook would love to have, to see some of the things that Asian consumers show in their private messaging apps, using it for e-commerce. So, I think maybe that's the direction we'll see. It's a good question, but there's so much that is left unanswered here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I also think I think cost savings are a real benefit of doing this. I'm not saying it's the primary one, because I do believe it's about the data, and I do believe it's about this cross geography, cross potentially device, depending on which application on what device is mostly used in the different countries. And when you look at their advertising base and you look at the top 80% of their revenue from advertising, it's the Fortune hundreds, consumer brands that are just taking away spend from TV and they're putting it on Facebook. And Facebook obviously has these other properties, and they want to hit consumers globally if they're global brands. So I think there's definitely a cost savings. I think there's definitely a better user experience because you can go through the different gateways, potentially. We have to see how that plays out. And then I do think there's some really smart potentially monetization capabilities for advertisers that are global buyers. So it's really subject to be seen, but I kind of agree with what everyone's saying. And I think the jury's still out, but they're going to get the cost savings because they're going to have one code base. They're going to be able to re-engineer a lot of staff, a lot of tech debt, and they'll probably be able to ship faster and test faster. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it should definitely be interesting, and very, very good points there in the end. We're going to move on and talk next about two documentaries that are putting influencers in the spotlight, and it's not pretty. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Asana. Look, I have used a lot of project management software. I've worked with quite a few companies. I've had to adopt the platforms that they're using. And I've always had the ongoing suspicion that nobody really understands how to make it easy for the user. I mean, it's always like very easy to enter in all your calendar events, but then it's hard to manage, or vice versa, or there's no messaging, or you can't communicate effectively via the platform, or people just don't adopt it. And that's why I was so excited when I first was introduced to Asana. I was working for a startup here in New York, 16 Zeros. They were adopting it. They were using it to manage their tech stack. And then suddenly they started using it for the communications, which was partly why I was consulting with them. And I found it to be one of the easiest to use platforms I'd ever come across. It was so simple to create new events, to create new tasks, to find out where everybody was at any given time. Both from a standpoint of entering and creating these tasks, to actually completing tasks, to managing the whole process. Everything was just so simple, elegant, and easy to do. And what made it really exciting for me, the thing that got me most jazzed about this particular platform, was the apps. Because I had an iPad app that was built for an iPad, and I had an iPhone app that was built for an iPhone. And from what I understand, there's equally great apps built for Android devices. And it was just this easiest thing possible to go from platform to platform, to keep in touch with what was going on in my project at any given time. It was just so elegant and beautiful. And, you know, you're not alone when you're actually using this app. I'm not alone in my admiration of it. Companies like Tribeca Film Festival use this app on a regular basis to manage their events. And, you know, with something like the Tribeca Film Festival, there's so many loose ends to tie up. There's so many details, little details about getting people to the right place at the right time, and managing ticket sales, and managing promotions, and managing press, and managing all the things that go into a film festival. They trust Asana to do it all. And they're not alone, because over 1 million organizations in 195 countries across the world use Asana to the betterment of every project that they're trying to manage. And one stat I want to leave you with, this is accountability. 80% of customers say Asana increases team accountability. And really, that's what Asana is so good at doing, because it's become such an easy platform to use that people find it easy to adopt. They get involved with it without any problems. They start managing their projects a lot more efficiently. And they tend to be more accountable to the tasks that you assign them for, because they know that this platform is working. It's something that integrates really, really well into their life. So I want you to give your marketing team everything they need to work more productively and turn big ideas into marketing programs, and marketing programs into results that grow business. Because I'm going to let you try Asana free for 30 days. That's a 30-day free, no obligation trial. I want you to get started right now. Give it a shot. Asana.com/BeanCast. That's ASANA.com/BeanCast. Asana, it's what I use. I trust it. I think you're going to love it too. And we thank them very much for their support of the show. Well, the infamous Fire Festival. Remember that, Augie? The Fire Festival?
Nice. Yeah, I attended. Sure, I totally remember it.
The infamous Fire Festival is the subject of 2 recently released documentaries. And as part of the exposés, a lot of attention was placed on the role of influencers in perpetuating the scam. Ryan, they didn't expose any problems we as marketers didn't already know about influencer tactics. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with disclosure and whether or not people are vetted properly and whether or not people are doing due diligence to make sure that what they're promoting is legitimate. But what about consumer skepticism? Does this documentary, these two documentaries, do they create a sense that influencers are not to be trusted, and will it affect the impact of the tactic among the general population?
Yeah, it's a great question and setup here. Look, the point, the whole, let's call it summary in my mind, is excellent documentary or documentaries, outstanding influencer marketing, followed by incompetent product delivery. And I think what consumers don't know, and you know, again, we have confirmation bias on this call, right? Recency bias and confirmation bias, because what we do for a living. Influencers were in the dark, generally speaking, about what was going on. And so were the people on the team working on the festival itself, at least as the documentaries portrayed in my mind. I think consumers, just like any other scheme, they need to have their radar up. If you saw a TV station running commercials for Bernie Madoff style investment sham, they don't know it's a sham at the time, but they make millions off the ad time, and people lose millions by investing in the scheme. And the question is, should the channel or influencer give back their profits if they truly didn't know? Now, this is an issue with consumers, to your question. So I think this is really, really important. And there's two different types of influencers. One are these large, big celebrity types, and they do say, just like you did earlier about Asana as your sponsor, this is our sponsor. They will say, like a Kyle Jenner, a lot of models that do this. They will say paid by, though it's very hard to audit sponsored content, especially in a social network where Instagram is the leading influencer platform. I've worked with influencers for the past 8 years, and look, I personally, as a marketer, like it when they don't say paid by, endorsed by, sponsored by, etc. And I think consumers are definitely going to be more leery if they've seen this documentary. I think a lot of consumers have their radar up in general now. I think when they're looking at content, it's important that they do. Now, what I didn't know, and doing some research, is that the FTC did warn, at least in the U.S., they warned celebrities and influencers that they have to be clear about when a post has been paid for.
Oh yeah,
but not all of them do it, and like I said earlier,
and
it's
some marketers, like
impossible to audit.
somebody on this call just admitted that he likes it when they don't disclose. I hope no one from the FTC is listening.
Look, I agree with that. Trust is lost when you're selling something that you were paid for but didn't, declare.
I wouldn't say trust is lost. People can be paid for something. Look, I have 2 podcasts and we have sponsors, and we build trust with our audience, and we appreciate our sponsors. And I'm going to speak for Bob here. We appreciate our sponsors. So we're thankful that they're supporting us, and we make our audience know that, and we try to sell their product as clearly as possible. Now, we disclose the fact that they're our sponsor, but I don't believe trust is lost, because the point I feel that the reason companies sponsor my podcast is because we have trust with our audience. And I think that's got to be the case with most influencers. And I'm assuming with Bob and your sponsors as well.
I think part of the problem in all these discussions, though, is that we get really general when we start talking about it. For instance, we've already conflated here on this call sponsorship of a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And, what Bob just did was an ad. He does a break. He announces its sponsorship. It's a brand, and they want to sponsor this wonderful content.
Can I just say, Bob, great read on that.
Oh.
You did an awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you. It's tough to be that honest.
That's a wildly different thing than hiring Kendall Jenner and Haley Baldwin to jump around in their bikinis with lovely video to sell this imaginary festival, or getting a bunch of them to post an orange tile on the day that the tickets become available. So we've already conflated a bunch of different things, and I think that it's important to recognize that a lot of these models did not reveal that they were paid. Now, we don't know that they didn't go down and fly down to the Caribbean and play in the surf for free. And so I'd say that maybe the video sort of stands as an ad. People know they're being advertised to. But what happened was a lot of these influencers then got into this orange tile campaign when the Fire Festival launched, and most of those posts didn't seem to have any acknowledgement that they were paid for. And so what's happening is that in certain cases, these individuals who are highly compensated, in the documentary I saw on Netflix, it indicated that there was some evidence that Kendall Jenner was paid $250,000 just to make a single tweet. And you have to wonder, as a result, whether these brand names, which Kendall Jenner and Haley Baldwin actually are actually tying themselves to things they don't know that they're getting into. And as a result, of course, the people that they're advertising to don't know what they're getting into. And so I do think it really begins to beg the question, what do we need to do to make sure people know that they're seeing advertising? That is an ethical standard that has existed in the ad world and is enshrined by the FTC and has been that way for decades. It hasn't changed in the internet era. And it's clear that too many marketers are playing too loose.
One of the questions that I always debate when it comes to disclosure is when does it count as an ad and when does it count as a legitimate endorsement of a product? I mean, just because I'm paid to promote Asana, if I were to get on, Twitter and talk about, oh, Asana was really great, I had a great experience with it.
Once you have a material relationship because they have paid you, that's
but they've paid me for podcast ads. They've not paid me for doing things online, talking about the
relationship. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? Just to be clear, obviously, but my understanding of the way to interpret the FTC rules and to keep your brand safe and to keep your influencer safe is every material relationship has to be disclosed. So now that you have a relationship, you'd have to disclose it, even though you really like it. And it's great that you really like it. I could hear the honesty in your voice, but you still have to disclose because the material relationship exists. And knowing that there's a material relationship could alter the way people consider your endorsement.
And this is the way I see it as well. I mean, I see it.
I'm sorry. Is there really a law that says, because there are YouTube personalities that I don't think they disclose when something's being sponsored, and I see Instagram people that don't disclose. They show products.
The fact that the FTC sucks at enforcement doesn't mean that it's not there.
Right. Exactly.
The FTC rules are very clear.
Yeah, it's similar to canned spam. I mean, right? Obviously, there's time and date stamps and things like that with consent, but it's really, really hard to enforce this. I mean,
it appears that it's just not being enforced because nobody seems to care.
There have been brands that have gotten in trouble, though, and there have been some influencers that have gotten in trouble. It's been few and far between, I grant you, and I've always been a proponent that the FTC should get a lot more active. Heck, we've got a giant budget deficit in this country. Let's start charging our wealthiest influencers and charging them with violating this law and finding some heavy fines. Maybe we could balance the budget. Kendall Jenner's got the cash.
Look, it's all publicity at the end of the day, right? And I think brand managers and influencers will be more cautious, and that can only be a good thing. And sometimes it does take a documentary on a major reach platform like Netflix and Hulu to change things.
I'm not convinced most users, though, will get a lot about influencer marketing out of this. I know that the four of us on this call are going to watch these documentaries, and that's the thing we'll be watching. But I wonder if it will resonate. Earlier, we made the comment about what people don't know about what Facebook or WhatsApp.
But at least in the Netflix documentary in particular, they spent a long time talking about the fact that influencers were involved and how they were culpable to it. I
still think that the thing that most people are going to get out of it is twofold. One is that the guy who who started this thing was just an unethical jerk. He kind of represents the Silicon Valley, fake it till you make it, just keep lying until it all falls apart sort of, mentality that too many people see in Theranos and other things that have happened in Silicon Valley. And the second thing is just the Schadenfreude of watching a bunch of wealthy people who paid thousands of dollars to go see Blink 182 play a concert get ripped off. So I'm not convinced this is really going to resonate as an influencer marketing warning message.
Good points all. Good points all. Well, I want to talk about another story that kind of came to the top of my attention this week. Two big stories from the streaming world. First, we learned that Hulu is lowering prices for its mid-tier ad-supported option, going down to $4.99. It's a real bargain, so if you're not on a Hulu subscription, now's the time to do it. And next, we learned that Viacom is intending to acquire Pluto TV. Add to this the efforts by Disney to become a streamer and AT&T's intentions for HBO to turn that into a direct Netflix competitor, and all the rest of the recent news about the streaming world. We see dozens of streaming strategies starting to emerge. Everyone is gearing up for some kind of battle royale for streaming dominance. So, David, who's getting it right and who's failing heavily? What's going on here?
Well, I think it's kind of impossible to determine who's getting it right or who's failing heavily. I mean, there's no question that Netflix is doing it right because they're cranking out more content that we're all kind of amazed by. I will tell you, in the non-streaming department, the people who are definitely doing it wrong are the players in the cable providers and the satellite providers who are losing ground just selling network and cable television. They're only losing subscribers. That's all that's happening there. And so they're all trying desperately to have, some kind of a digital play here. It is definitely going to get confusing. I mean, the amount of options and choices is getting larger and larger every day. And the quality, what I'm amazed by, is just increasing every day. So like everything, there's probably going to be the one thing that everyone needs to have, like, with HBO, Game of Thrones, Sopranos, whatever. And Amazon has a few, must-haves too as well. So if you can have that killer piece of content that drives everyone to your service, that will do it. And also will awaken people to that your service actually exists.
I take your points, and I understand where you're going with this, but I want to talk about the Hulu move in particular, because the Hulu move for me was probably the most interesting news I've heard in the streaming space in a long time. Because it's not just that they lowered the price to $4.99, they're getting close to a point where they're going to offer their services for free with ad support, which would be a huge boon for advertisers, because if you want to see all this content, you go to Hulu and you're going to immediately get it for free, and all you have to do is watch ads in the middle of it. Okay, that's like broadcast television, and if you want to turn the ads off, then you subscribe to it. That for me is a really interesting move in the streaming space, because everybody's concentrating on the subscription. Nobody's concentrating on how do we acquire all these users.
YouTube TV does that. So YouTube TV does have forced interstitial ads on some of their programming. So that is happening. And actually, I'm a YouTube TV subscriber. I cut the cord with all the cable services because they were gouging me. And I turned out I'm getting the same service and I'm saving $100 a month. Being that I'm a YouTube TV subscriber. So I don't think it's that unique, but the thing that's going to be now different, if you are now taking advertisers like Hulu does, like YouTube does, you must disclose your subscriber numbers. Netflix doesn't take advertising. They don't need to disclose anything.
Very good points. Very, very good points.
I think it's really interesting, what Hulu and YouTube have done. To me, it's a reaction to Netflix, right? Netflix has
Hey, Ryan?
extremely.
Ryan?
Hello?
Yeah, I just wanted you to be careful. Your microphone is an inline microphone on your earbuds, and it's scraping against some stuff. It's making a lot of noise and hard to hear
Oh,
you.
sorry about that.
But go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is Netflix has created some pretty big moats. I mean, it's a pretty big moat. They have some incredible content, both in the content library and new content development that have created some of the most loyal followers. But they've raised prices. Let's call it what it is. Let's just go to the 4 Ps, right? They have raised prices, and they've really started to put their foot on the pedal in terms of inflating these prices in the past 24 months. And when I look at Hulu, who's really come around, I mean, look, it started off, it was solid, but it didn't have some of the marquee shows that it has today. And I think what they've been doing on the content side has been phenomenal, but what they're doing now on the business side to react to sort of what I call their right to win. Why would they have a right to beat Netflix? I think this advertising monetizable business model, while lowering their cost, selling a cheaper chair on the ads supported side, is brilliant. While Netflix has lost some content. I mean, they've lost some pretty big players that want to, conquest, and sequester their own content, and whether they want to bring it somewhere else or create their own streaming program, programming, let's call it, i.e. Disney. I think it's really, really clever. So what Hulu and YouTube TV are doing, in my view, is they're creating their rights to win relative to the competitive dynamics. And I think it's really smart.
What about the Viacom move, Augie? I mean, it's this move by Viacom to acquire Pluto TV, which is essentially just a stripped down skinny bundle of sorts that streams a whole bunch of different networks via their application, which is available on Roku and on Apple TV, etc. Do you think this is a really smart move on their part? Do you believe that a whole bunch of other networks are going to want to sign on for Viacom's streaming service so that they can get their ads to more viewers via this application?
Difficult for me to say, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't even familiar with Pluto TV, to be honest, until I saw the headline.
Same here. I never heard of it.
It looks like an awfully small player. The thing ultimately that I see with all of these moves, I had a friend 6 to 12 months ago on LinkedIn who predicted that Netflix was going to have a higher market cap than Disney. And I sort of said I thought that was ridiculous. And she was right briefly, but Netflix stock has been down because it's getting into a really dangerous period. It has all the eyeballs. It was the early leader, but it doesn't really own its own content. It has Stranger Things. It's got a few things here or there. But if you're going to compare Netflix to somebody like Disney or any of the big cable channels, the Showtimes and HBOs, which are expert at developing their own content and monetizing it. Even the networks. I mean, you started by saying the networks were getting it wrong, but they're sitting on a boatload of content, and they're all making their way into having their own apps and allowing better access. I have a hard time seeing where a company like Netflix fits, which of course is why it is producing just wild amounts of content. I can't even, I'm a Netscript subscriber. I can't even keep up with all the new things that they keep producing. They've got new trailers every week, and it's all very impressive, but it's also very costly. And it's because they're going to lose all the other content that they've got because other people own it and other people now want it in their apps, just like Disney has made the decision with theirs. So I don't know. This all feels like, to me, a new space race for who can get the best content at the right price, whether it's ad monetized or not. Everyone wants their own app, and ultimately I fear that the loser is going to be the customer, because do customers really want to subscribe to 8 different things because they've got one different show on 8 different services? So I'm sort of curious to see how it all shakes out. I'm in this race. I'm kind of sitting on the side watching and don't really have a horse in this race.
Well, we're running out of time, so I'm going to jump right into the last topic real quick. Facebook is finally giving us insight into the quality of our postings and possibly, just possibly, even answers as to why our content is being penalized or even suppressed. Augie, is this an important tool that could show us how to better engage with our audience, or is it just a pacifier to help us feel better about, oh, this is why Facebook doesn't like me?
I think it's more a pacifier, to be perfectly honest. Listen, transparency is great. I welcome Facebook doing a better job of being transparent. Anyone who has managed a business page or even like a Yelp business listing can often find that they're frustrated that these giant Silicon Valley companies make a decision, they communicate it badly, and there's little way to object. There's almost no process. So transparency is better. But here's what this new feature does is it lets people know if they are doing unethical things, and are legitimate marketers really worried that they're doing unethical things. So what this new feature does is it lets you know if your posts contain unacceptable nudity or hate speech. How many brands are worried about that? This new feature lets page managers know if something they have posted has been found false by fact checkers. Again, how many brands are worried that they're going to be fact checked by Snopes or PolitiFact? And so this is really aimed at Facebook trying to show that it's doing something about fake news, but because the purveyors of fake news don't care, they're not going to check the quality of their posts. They know what they're posting. I can't see that this will make any difference whatsoever. So maybe it's
honestly,
a first step to something else, but not so.
Honestly, let me ask you a question. Do you have a lot of like white supremacists listening to the show, Bob?
Not
Because
that I know of.
I think this news is really just for the white supremacists that have Facebook groups, because it's really not geared towards general advertisers. They're really looking at, have you done something like hate speech? And why have we demoted or removed your page from the site?
Okay, so
I think most of the listeners, again,
that's what.
they have
Okay,
a huge group of white nationalists listening to the show.
Yes,
So
yes,
they're
I
gonna be concerned with
understand. But I also know there are people like Wendy Cooper who comes on the show quite often. Wendy's always complaining about the fact that she does no idea why Facebook stopped allowing her to promote the EasyGo Pro stool that she was selling. It's just like there was no explanation.
But this announcement, let me clarify. This announcement by Facebook is not going to talk to you about whether something was spam. So this does not address that issue. Right. So whatever Wendy's issue is, it probably falls into the category.
Unless
if it's
Wendy
spam
was,
or if the information is found to be copyright infringed. So that's not what this announcement is about. It's not about that.
Right. So maybe this is a first step to get there, but for right now, this is literally, you posted white supremacy information, you posted violent information, you posted nude information, or you posted something that fact checkers say is false. And I don't think there's any brands out there that worry about any of that.
So again, but I think the reason Bob put in this in here is he's got a lot of white supremacists that listen to the show.
Okay,
right?
We don't have white supremacists listening to the show, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not sure they could take listening to my show, considering all the liberal discussions that we usually end up in. So I'm not really sure that's the case.
They're probably hate
so
listening
please,
to the show.
let's not start this internet meme. Thank you very much, Mr. David Spark.
I think you just kind of I think the meme started, and I believe that's going to now be the title of the show, Bob.
Well, it's time for the Ad Fail 5. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Augie Ray. Careful there, Ryan, your microphone's scraping again. Augie Ray, you can find him at Gartner.com. Tell us, what's going on in your world, Augie? What would you like to promote?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that the Gartner Marketing Symposium is coming up in San Diego at the end of April. It has been a phenomenally successful and growing marketing event. It gets really rave reviews. It'll be bigger than ever. Those of you who maybe track a little bit about research firms know that Gartner has acquired CEB and L2 recently, and so we're going to have speakers from those groups as well. So just go to Google and search for Gartner Marketing Symposium to learn more.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely check it out. Augie's great, and the content over at Gartner is phenomenal, so check it out. Ryan Scott, you can find him at slicelife.com. Am I correct? Is that the...
Yes, or you can find us on the app stores. So yeah, I would like to do a shameless plug. Please download the Slice Pizza app. We have over 11,000 local independent pizzerias who would love to showcase their delicious cuisine to you. And why pay more for pizza when you can order from Slice? And the best part is you're actually doing good as well because we only charge pizzerias $1.95 per order. And this allows them to maximize their profits and do what they do best, which is make delicious food, while we help them with the marketing and technology. And hopefully you like the product. We've designed it to help you find your favorite or to discover a new pizzeria in your neighborhood. And we are available in all 50 states.
I loved hearing your vision for it and the vision of the company for how you take small pizzerias, you take the small business person, and you give them the opportunity to compete against the big chains. I love that mission that you're on. So it's a really, really cool app. I definitely recommend it to everybody out there. And last but not least, we have David Spark. You can find him at sparkmediasolutions.com. Tell us what's going on in your world, David. What would you like to promote?
I got lots to plug. First, I released a new book called Watch This, the definitive guide to video marketing. And this actually also has a ton of research in it that I did on actually specifically B2B technology companies, what they're doing in video marketing and what they're not doing. And really, this is a great book if you do any video marketing, which you should be doing, and will help you avoid all the mistakes your competitors are making. Anyways, you can find that on sparkmediasolutions.com. But the other thing is, I have 2 podcasts of my own. If you're in the security or cybersecurity marketing space, you should be listening to them. One is called the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. The other one, which I just launched, is Defense in Depth. And they're both doing really well, and they all can be found on CISOseries.com. And yes, I will be in New York next week, Bob, to do a live recording of the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast, of which I did one just last week in San Francisco, and it went over really well. So I'm looking forward to doing the live one in New York. You can find that all at CISOseries.com.
Yeah, David, for those of you who don't know David's background, David has some serious TV credentials. You know, he's been a presenter on television. He's been a PR guy. He's done marketing. He's done content. He knows the business. And if he's put out a book, if he has a podcast, you should definitely pay attention to him. He's got great stuff. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And you can even find out how to advertise on the program. If you like that Asana ad, I can do one for you as well. So check it out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for the AdFail 5, a rundown of the lowest moments in advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, last week, Gillette was woke, Augie. This week, they're just another Twitter user trying to explain their past sexist tweets.
Yeah, I've been seeing the term woke washing popping up. Now, I do not want to cast aspersions to what Gillette did. I really liked it. I wasn't offended by it. Didn't bother me, and I think it sent a right message. And I think we do want brands to try to be better and to contribute to a better world. All that being said, we got to be careful, because if they do one ad like this and then move on, and it's right back to, sexist sorts of advertising, it's a real problem. So I'm on the alert for woke washing these days.
Okay, and I think we have a title for the show. Next up, city documents revealed that let me get this here. Court documents reveal that Facebook orchestrated a multi-year effort that duped children and their parents out of money, in some cases hundreds of or even thousands of dollars, and then often refused to give the money back. Facebook basically encouraged game developers to let children spend money without their parents' permission, David, something the social media giant called, and I quote, friendly fraud. I mean, Facebook...
Friendly fraud. Oh, what a nice idea.
I mean,
as a parent with kids who play games, I would not call any of that friendly.
Yeah.
I am shocked to find gambling going on in this establishment.
Well put. Now, Google announced changes being proposed for the Chrome browser, Ryan, which result in breaking every ad blocker out there. I mean, it's just like Google is playing both ends of this game. They're saying, well, Chrome will block ads, but it's still going to have legitimate ads from Google, and we're going to break all the other ad blockers so you can still get ads from Google. This is starting to look really, really fishy, isn't it?
It sounds like a game called Monopoly. So I'll leave it at that.
Well done. Now, next up, Google also gained dubious honor this week of receiving the highest GDPR fine so far. Augie, they are appealing their $50 million euro ruling. It's $57 million.
$57 million. And a little trivia, you guys can play along. How many hours of Google's net income does that giant fine represent? Anyone want to guess?
15 minutes?
Wow, not quite that much, but it's less than 14 hours of Google's net income based on their last quarterly result. And so, clearly this is going to make a giant dent in petty cash.
And they're appealing it yet, so go figure. Next up, between layoffs at Verizon, BuzzFeed, and Gannett, we lost over 1,000 media jobs last week, Ryan. Yay for the advertising business. Yay for the media business. It's a good time to be alive, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say very challenging times. Obviously, when I saw the announcements, I couldn't say I was shocked, but at the same time, look, people lost jobs, and I empathize and hope they find something great in the near future. But I think this just is a telltale shift of what's happening today.
And last but not least, this is not an official ad fail. This is more like a public service announcement that I'm putting here at the end. But there will be no sweethearts this Valentine's Day. Not the candy ones, at least. The makers of the candy hearts with the little messages on them closed their doors and sold the IP, but the new owner didn't get their act together in time for Valentine's Day. So no candy hearts, David. You're not going to be able to get any sweethearts this Valentine's Day.
I'll talk to my wife about it.
Well, have something to add to this list or just want to discuss it, comment online, use the hashtag AdFail5. That's pound, AdFail, and the number 5. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.